the invite. Thanks, Jim, for the invite. I've talked to Jim now several times and his cohorts and running for the school board. It's not an easy thing to do to be on a school board. And let me just tell you some facts. School board members, once they're elected, the state does mandate a paycheck. You can opt out of that paycheck by not giving them your social security number, but I don't know anybody that does that because it's $125 per meeting and there's 1 or 2 of those a month. So I have to tell you, I've worked full time at this for 4 years for $250 a month. It's not a high paid job. You really have to be into it because you're really in love with children and you're in love with educating children, and you think that you can get on a school board and help them make decisions in the best interest of the children. And so every time I start or my organization starts to coach people running for school board, the first thing I say is if you don't absolutely love children, you don't absolutely love education, please don't run for the school board. And so just kind of wean yourself out. So those people who have elected to spend volumes of time working on this, now not everybody needs to spend that kind of time, so I'm trying not to, here, by this statement, trying not to scare you out of it, but you do have to be someone that is willing to investigate things. That's what's different about my organization. When I started on the school board, I was very, very lonely. There was this one conservative and 4 not. So I would usually vote my conscience and they would vote theirs, and they would always outvote me because the majority rules, and that's okay, because one person can make a difference. And what I was asking my district to do was think about things in a different way. And at first there was a whole lot of resistance because you're not a good person. For some reason being a conservative was a bad thing. And so they just didn't want to hear what I had to say. But we put a levy on the ballot for the 5th time. After I got on the school board, there were 4 that failed before I got there. The 5th time then, the school board, obviously the other board members disagreed. I said I don't think we should put it on. I thought we would fail for a 5th time. We had not made the changes the community was asking us to make. So I said no, but the 4 of them said yes, it went on the ballot. It lost by more than it had ever lost by before. So they finally came to me and said, okay, what do you want, Kohls? You know, what are your demands, kind of thing. And I said, well, let's just start with thinking about what the kids need first, and then worrying about the adult needs later. Let's kind of shift this philosophy a little bit. And there were some things that we were doing that lots of schools across the state do. So you might hear, well, that's what everybody else does. That's true. Then we have to think of outside the box ideas. Let's stop doing that, for one. Let's stop comparing ourselves to other districts. Let's start working on a new model that works better for our students. And so at that time we were projecting a $30 million deficit. That's why we needed this emergency levy money. We had failed it 5 times. Finally, we kind of went to the treasurer and said, well, we're going to want to change that healthcare cost split. We're going to want to demand maybe more like a 80-20 healthcare cost split. But it was kind of funny that the treasurer came back and all of a sudden she had a surplus in the budget. It was no longer a $30 million deficit. There was a surplus. So we didn't need the 80-20 healthcare cost split. Is that magic? Well, I thought it was magic. But nobody seemed to ask a question about, okay, how did you perform that magic, going from a $30 million projected deficit to a $5 million surplus? Nobody seemed to ask those questions. So I knew that there was a lot of room within that budget to play with it. And the outcome of the bottom line in either 1 year, 3 years, 5 years could be whatever you wanted it to be. Your dream was the demand. And so there had to be more scrutiny. If we could change the budget, a total of about $42 million once we all said and done without new money, something was wrong with the way we were doing things. And so we changed a few things, spending. I'm going to show you some of those and talk to you about some of those today. But I think that one person, or in your case, 3 people getting on the school board and asking questions, we're not trying to beat up our system. We're just trying to correct some of the errors that might be happening. And again, that wasn't received well for quite a while. You probably saw the video, or you will shortly. Kelly Kohls did this, 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 and this. So the opposition is huge against a change agent. None of that video is true. We still have all of our sports, all of our PTOs, all of our extracurriculars. This video says that we have none of those. and that Springboro is a ghost town. Well, I just talked to the city manager today. I talked to Clear Creek Township yesterday. Housing starts have doubled since I took my board position. So that's not true. The starts in the Springboro area. And housing values have gone up. That's according to the realtors. But they would portray it out there that we're just flailing because we've held this tight spending model. For some reason, people out there, which you know who that would be, likely the OEA, would like you to think that we're just going to fail now. Our kids will get stupid, and everybody will leave Springboro. But that's not the truth. It's actually the opposite. I think people are enjoying that this November, we're not only, we're giving our faculty raises, we're rolling back the renewal levy. $1.3 million less is what we will be collecting from our taxpayers now. Can it be done? Absolutely. Absolutely. And can your children thrive and actually succeed? Absolutely. We're a proven model. And that's why there's some people out there that would really like you to not listen to anything I have to say, but you say, well, I want to listen to all sides. Okay? All right, so I think that one of the things I'd like people to understand is that you as citizens, you don't have to run for the school board, you don't have to be on the school board. Please just start asking questions of the system. Please ask some of these things. How do we know we're doing what we need to do? How do you measure that? And the more you get into that, and maybe that's your expertise, you can find out what Westerville might be missing and how are you addressing that school district, because that's what I did. I just said, okay, I looked into our remedial rates, for example. You know what those are? Those are rates, or excuse me, those are classes that your students would have to take to get into college. Did you know that 41% of the graduates in the state of Ohio do not meet the minimum competencies to get into college? So they have to take a catch-up math or English class to go ahead and get into college. 41%. That's approaching half of our students. So somewhere there's a disconnect. And I'm not blaming the instructors. I'm a teacher, just by the way. I'm a teacher. I was a professor in higher ed for 10 years. So I'm not blaming the instruction. I'm blaming some of the rules to instruction. I do blame parents. I do blame the administration, so I spread the wealth. But there are some problems. There are some problems that we need to address. So you have to start asking questions. How do we know we have the best of the best? Because when it comes time for needing more money, aren't we always told that we need to pay and benefit the way we are to keep the best of the best? And the good response that I've kind of glommed onto is, how do we know? We have never measured teaching effectiveness. How would we know if we have the best of the best? It's likely that Westerville has the best of the best. Just show me. Where is the data? How do I know this teacher is a great teacher? The state of Ohio has changed some of the laws recently that will help you decipher who is the best of the best, which is very helpful. We're going to start measuring teaching effectiveness next year.
Good.
We're piloting a tool this year. The state has mandated this. The school districts will pilot a tool this year so that we can measure a student's growth from one year to the next. So we're not going to measure one class to the other. We're going to measure individual student growth. So that way, if you have a large class full of special ed students, if you have a large class of special ed students, then you're not compared to the teacher next door, you're just compared in their growth. At the end of the school year, did you allow them, through instruction, to grow a year's worth of curriculum? Next, how do we know it's for the kids? Because we're told again it's for the kids, and that was a question I kept asking. With every expense, is that for the kids, and can you describe to me how that would benefit education for the kids? That's all you got to ask. How do we know? And there's good answers lots of times, but that way you know and we know. How do we know we're spending what we should? And what are we missing? Let's start with how we're doing globally. Can you do the next slide, please? Okay, well this is PISA results. It goes a little bit off the charts there, and I'll describe it more in a minute. Can we? And in 2009, the PISA results showed that overall scores in the U.S. lagged behind the countries up above that. Now, the PISA is done, it's an international standardized test, and it's done every 3 years. And it was completed in 2012, and the results will be published December of this year. But my guess is that we won't improve much from 2009. We'll see, we're hopeful. But I don't think we'll do much, because we really haven't changed anything within the country or within this state to change our academic outcome, my guess is it'll look a lot the same. Next slide, please. PISA is the Program for International Student Assessment. 2009 PISA scores were based on 60 other countries. 33 of them were industrialized. In science, and by the way, you don't have to take notes, I see people scurrying. This is available, I'll send it to Jim. I'll send you every slide. Most of the slides are referenced, so it's easy for you to go to that site and see more data if you'd like to. It's a lot easier to do it that way. But in science, 22 other countries did better than the US. In math, 31 other countries did better than the US. And in reading, 14 other countries did better than the US. Next slide, please. Okay, another test that's referred to often in the literature is called the TIMSS test. And it is called the Third International Mathematics and Science Study. Dr. Pascal Forgione is the Commissioner of Educational Statistics. These are his words, so I'm going to quote him on this. He says, the results of the TIMSS test involving 500,000 students in 41 countries are authoritative. He said that by the time our students are ready to leave high school, ready to enter higher education, and the labor force, they are doing so badly with science, they are significantly weaker than their peers in other countries. Our idea of advanced is clearly below international standards. He said that there appears to be a consistent weakness in our teaching performance in the physical sciences that becomes magnified over the years. And again, I don't want anybody to think that that's the teachers. I think it's got a lot to do with standards and the curriculum and things like that. I don't think that we have people not working in that classroom. I think we do. Next slide, please. The results in shorts of the TIMSS test show that fourth graders were performing poorly, middle school students worse, high school students are unable to compete. By the same criteria used to say that we are average in elementary school, we appear to be near the bottom at the high school level. People have a tendency to think that that picture is bleak, but it doesn't apply to me. My school is better than that. But the chances are that even if your school district performs well on the SATs, they would actually be an international lightweight. Next slide, please. Okay, other countries do better than math. It's an article I kind of pulled from, I think it was the Huffington Post. Anyway, there's two references there. So let's look at that. For years, the US has lagged behind other countries in math and science. A 2009 study showed that American students ranked 25th of 34 countries, behind nations like China, Singapore, South Korea, Hong Kong, and Finland. Why? Next slide, please. Is it spending? Are we just not putting enough resources towards that? In this line, and it was published in, I think it's 2009, yes, it showed that we were second in education spending, second only to Switzerland, but today we lead the globe in the amount of money we put towards education. Next slide, please. This is from the Cato Institute, and again, there are a wealth of information. It's a good place to go look at tendencies or trends. Here, the blue line shows that from 1970 to 2012, that's our spending in this country on education. The lines down across the bottom are reading, math, and science scores. Okay, next slide, please. The greenish line going up is, again, spending. And the lines across the bottom are the SATs, so the upper level. How are the 10th graders, 11th graders scoring? And you can see across time those scores have not changed, even though we have been giving it those resources. Next slide, please. Is it maybe class size? Are we just upping the class size? But this is, again, tendency over time. What's happening to class sizes? Next slide, please. Global class size. Let's look at other countries and what they do. Many Asian countries score higher than the US in math and science and yet have higher class sizes. Hong Kong, for example, Singapore, Japan have class sizes from 30 to 38, whereas in the US we average 23 to 28. Now, to be fair, there were some of these countries that did do better than us in those subjects. Sorry, I forgot to do that. But have smaller class sizes. So the US appeared to be right in the middle as far as class size. That didn't seem to be something that was a significant indicator of effective teaching. Next slide, please. Okay, and this is Ohio. I got this from the Ohio Department of Ed, and I think it's Ohio statistics, but this was for 8th graders. Again, showing per pupil spending over time, and that's since 99 to 2009. And then the 8th grade math and reading results. Next slide, please. Okay, this is from a presentation called Grading on a Curve, and I can send that, any one of you email me and I can send you these reports because they're longer. I just kind of pulled out what I needed. But this was done by a woman by the name of Colleen Grady and Ann Sheldon, and they work hard, and I know I won't get their titles correct for this organization, but they work hard to look at gifted students and what we're doing for the gifted populations. So they wrote this report, and what they showed here was that the red line is, again, the number of schools that have been, this is in Ohio, called excellent or excellent with distinction. You see how that number has risen a lot. But this blue line is the amount of money that we've been spending on gifted students. That keeps declining. And that's been one of my issues, not necessarily issues, but one of my question areas is I keep questioning our district, what are we doing for that segment of our population? Are we doing enough? And how do we know we're doing enough? Where are the scores? Show me the scores. And so that's what a school board member should do, is ask the questions. Because if a school board member says, you know, this tendency is not looking positive, what are we doing to address it? And administration might come back and say, well, we have this plan. And I say, well, how do we know that plan works? Again, it's just asking questions. Show me if that works. Do you need more money? Do you need more resources? Do we need a different instruction? That's up to a board to help decide where we need those resources to go. And that doesn't necessarily mean more money. In Springboro's case, it didn't mean more money. It meant maybe a reallocation. We need to change some of the way we're spending. Okay, next slide, please. This is just showing that overall, within the United States, well, I wish I had my pointer here. But if you'll see, Ohio is gray, and gray is an average state. That's not new news to us. We know we're just an average state nationally. But if you look up here, there is one state that's that kind of amber or orange color, Massachusetts. I'm going to talk about Massachusetts a little bit more. But Massachusetts leads this country. And if you'll notice, they're the only one that's a leader in this country. Next slide, please. Wow, most improved. I don't refer to Dayton Daily as a newspaper. You won't hear me calling it that. We don't tend to get along. And so they don't tend to like the conservative mindset, and they make that clear in their articles. So I'll just call them Dayton Daily. Sometimes you'll hear me say tabloid, that's by accident. Anyway, a Dayton Daily article, and it was titled, Ohio School Boosts Ranking in 2 U.S. Studies. State showed improvement in National Quality Count scores. According to that National Quality Count scores, Ohio teachers earned a C+ for 2011 biennial report. The state had received a D+ 2 years before that, making it one of the most improved states according to that most recent study. The Quality Count Index, as previously reported by the Dayton Daily, put Ohio at 10th in the nation with an overall average grade of a C+. The nation as a whole, though, received a C from Quality Counts in 2011. The second performance study was conducted by the American Legislative Exchange Council. It was released last year, had Ohio coming in 21st in its K-12 performance and progress and reform. Next slide, please. Okay. When these metrics are managed, is Ohio really number 5? When these metrics are examined more closely, a less than top 10 performance emerges for Ohio. Ohio's ranking on the percent of schools where 8th graders taking algebra is the norm, Ohio ranks number 28. Ohio ranking with a number of students with a high AP score. AP is advanced placement. Those are the students who usually score pretty well, and they get to take those upper echelon of courses that are a little bit more challenging and rigorous. Ohio ranks number 27. The percent of students achieving advanced levels on the 8th grade NAEP on math exam, Ohio ranked a stellar number 33. Here's what we got to talk about. Is Ohio's education system is geared towards proficiency. Until we go beyond the mindset that proficiency or mediocre is excellent, we will never be a contender nationally. Next slide, please. I'll explain that a little bit more. Okay? This was a slide that I got from Tom Gunlock. He's the vice president of the Ohio School Board, and I've really gotten a lot of help from them because I'll ask for data, where is this information, and they guide me right to it. They'll send me the link, they'll send me the data, it's wonderful. So they've been a great resource for me. But we asked Tom Gunlock to come give us a presentation at Springboro, because in Springboro, probably like most schools in the state, we've been excellent with distinction forever, since that first came out. And we really thought we were doing fine, but we were hearing something about this A through F grading system. Have you heard about that? Okay, it's a good thing it's changing. But we had been hearing something about that, and we kind of wanted to know where Springboro would fall out in that A through F. So Tom Gunlock came and gave us a presentation. And what he was telling us is that Springboro, you're doing a lot of things right. However, when we go through this A through F, you will be a B district if we used your same criteria now. And that was shocking. What? We have something to improve? We've been excellent. How do you get better than excellent or excellent with distinction, right? We thought we are all that. How could you improve on all that? And he was telling us at that meeting that you're not all that. You have areas to improve. So here's what he's saying. He said, because these successes he just mentioned were based on minimums. And he said, well, what do I mean by minimums? The successes in this state and in our district, the successes are based on a system that was designed in the 1980s to measure whether students had at least an 8th, 9th, or 10th grade ability in basic subjects in order to graduate. He said, these are not the skills which prepare students to be accepted into college without the need to take remedial coursework, and I just said that. Almost half of our students have to take remedial courses. Nor are they the skills needed to get a good paying job immediately after graduating high school. And they're not adequately preparing kids to be ready for school, for college. Next slide. Okay? This is why. I want to show you this. This is where Ohio has gone wrong, and I don't think Massachusetts has followed in these footsteps, but, and I'm sorry this is a blue background. I need to take that off. Can you see it? Let me just kind of tell you what it is. See that word proficient? When a student takes a standardized exam, what comes back to the parents is this beautiful printout, beautiful bars. And my students never really been defined on how many they got right. I just know where their bar is. And the bar makes me think that they're doing fine. Because the bar also coordinates with a title. And if they score a certain place, like for example here, down here under OGT reading, if the child answers 79 to 100% of the questions correctly, they're called advanced. If they answer 66 to 78% of the questions correctly, they're called accelerated. If the student passes 43% of the questions correctly to 65%, they're called proficient. Now when I see those bars on my students' performance, I see proficient. I don't see that they only got 45% of the questions correct. I see that we call them proficient. Now what does proficient mean to you?
You know what they're doing.
Kind of good.
You got a grasp of the material, that you're doing fine, that you're doing okay. But if my student came home with anything that was marked 45 or 43%, I'm going to say you failed. When most of us say, okay, you failed, that's less than 50%. This is what we've been doing. We've been calling D's and F's proficient. And we've been letting these students move on to the next grade. We've not been calling it what it is, failing. And we've been allowing these students to go forward with that. Now, why have we done that? I'll probably get to that. So look at this. Look at math, 3rd grade math. A student only has to answer 58 to 79% of the questions correctly to be called proficient. We look over here down to 7th grade math. They only have to answer 32% of those questions correctly. Guys, we could guess and do that, and they're called proficient. Because if we defined them as a failing student, we might have to address that need, right? Somebody would have to address that need. If we said the student's failing, we can't pass them to the next grade if they got 32% correct on the standardized test. So the state has been decreasing that cut score so that more students can go on to the next grade, rather than addressing that need. And I am not saying that your district has to necessarily address that need. I'm saying somebody does. And I'm saying that this is where I blame parents. Parents, but although we've been kept from the facts, I claim that I'm guilty, but I'm innocent. Had I known that proficient meant this, it would scare me. I would go get a tutor. I would sit down with them at the table. I didn't know. So we have to let the parents know your student's failing, but don't blame the district necessarily. If the district has school board members on it that are saying, district, what are you doing about it? The next place is parents, what are you doing about it? There is Sylvan, there is tutoring, there is you sitting down with your student. If your student's in sports, they gotta come out. They need to spend their time in academics. I mean, that's just our priority at our house. I'm not telling everybody to do that, but sports became second. Academics were first, and chores second. And social life way down there. But, you know, that's the difference between what our country is doing and other countries are doing. We have not made academics our top priority. We have not made these children's learning our top priority. We have reprioritized. And I have to tell you, my conclusion will tell you again, I think it's because the adults have become the center of education and not the children. So you want school board members and you want citizens to say, okay, where is in this formula are the children coming first? Tell me, because I see a money funnel and that's going to the adults. When we obviously have deficiencies we need to address. I think I made my point there, but let me tell you this. Your district only needs 75% of your students to be proficient, and you get one of the indicators, which there are 24 now, 24 education indicators. So, and that's where you get your excellent or excellent distinction. Now, this year, that whole designation is gone. We will no longer talk in excellent and excellent distinction. We will talk A through F.
Good.
Yeah, and let me tell you more about that. Next slide, please. Okay, so comparisons. Oh, I think this is out of order. Okay. No, go ahead. I'll just talk. I talk a lot. But what I noticed our district would often do in answering my questions is they would say, well, other districts do such and such. And so when I started looking at what are they using to compare, there's the site, ODE, Ohio Department of Ed. You can Google that, and then they have a little search bar right at the top, right? Top right-hand side. You can put in certain things. If you put in CUP report, you will find a report, which I've got a copy of here for Westerville. You will find a report that compares your district to 19 other districts. So one whole column is the financials on your district. And then the next column will be the financials of the 19 similar districts, which ODE categorizes Westerville with 19 other districts because they want to match you up demographically. And they'll say, okay, Westerville residents or Westerville School Board or Administration, if you want to compare yourself to somebody, at least use a like demographic. Don't compare yourself to Springboro or don't compare yourself to Upper Arlington. Compare yourself to communities that are like yours. So it does that for you in the CUP report. And then the next whole column is state averages. So you can look at those. But that report isn't extremely helpful because, again, it doesn't tell you, if you're looking at cost per pupil, for example, and I know Jim and I have talked about this many times, because Upper Arlington spends, what, close to $15,000 per pupil, and what does Westerville spend? 11. Springboro spends $7,800. What those numbers don't tell you, there's a lot of things those numbers don't tell you. It doesn't tell you that somebody's overspending, although Upper Arlington is the poster child for taxpayer abuse. And then I will tell them any day of the week, and I have actually. But so it doesn't tell you that some of these school systems have the breakfast programs. That comes out of that cost per pupil. Some of them have where the children take dinner home. Some of them have pay-to-play fees, which supplement the general fund. We do. We have a $250 pay-to-play fee. So again, it doesn't tell you all of the details. So you can't compare, again, apples. It's not apples to apples. You have to ask a lot more questions to actually get at that bottom line. But Upper Arlington is really the poster child. I tell them. Similar districts, that's what I just said. You can go up to that Google bar and you can put in similar districts and you can find out what your similar districts are. I have a report here for Westerville. But it'll tell you the demographics of what ODE compares your school district to. And it's kind of interesting because you get to see on that how many of your citizens in this community, Westerville community, have higher ed degrees. And what the square footage is, how many students are enrolled at your district versus these other districts. It's all just kind of interesting information if you like that kind of stuff. And here I had West Claremont. I did not have time to change all these slides for you guys. I did some of them, but not all of them, so ignore West Claremont. But I did not have time to look at your proficiency level. I suspect that it's a lot like, that's the reason I chose West Claremont. It's a lot like West Claremont. What I will do for you is I'm going to get all this data that's specific to Westerville. I'll put it in these slides, and then I'll send it to Jim. So that Jim can send it all out to you guys, and then you'll have the exact numbers on all these slides that are for Westerville. I thought this whole court thing would be done by 2. I'd have a couple hours to get this. Didn't happen. What is AYP? AYP is annual adequate yearly progress, and then now there's 24 out of 24 indicators in total. Next slide, please. Okay, cruel host. That was really out of place. Anyway, this is from again that report, Grading on a Curve. And what this shows is that in 2002 and 3, 85 districts were excellent and excellent with distinction. Today, it's actually higher than this now, but 352 districts are excellent and excellent with distinction. Now, my question to Tom Gunlock, and I think it was Deb Turner at the time, I said, now, are more school districts doing better? Is that why? Are we doing better at educating students and they're performing better? And the answer was no. We've lowered those cut scores for what it takes to get proficient. So when people say dumbing down, that's absolutely true. And our Ohio School Board will admit it. That's what's been going on. Just stop doing that. Next slide, please. Tom Gunlock showed us this as well. He said, look, in Ohio, we believe that 42.8% of our 4th graders in reading are advanced. Remember, that was a pretty high score. But if we were to compare their answers and their results on their test to the national level, we'd actually only have 9% of our students that are advanced. So within the state, we have this kind of inflated version of how well we're doing. If we were to compare ourselves nationally, we're not doing so hot. So again, I like that the Ohio School Board has admitted this, that we've inflated our egos at the expense of education. And they've instituted a number of things to try to ratchet this down. We need to, as citizens, keep them on track. Keep doing it. I'm watching you. I'm watching the kids. I'm watching their progress. How are we doing? What are you doing? And it's not about the money. We've been throwing the money at that system. It's not done it. My opinion, it's about accountability. And it's about having school board members that hold the district accountable. We've not had that. Why have we not had that? Their coaches, as soon as a school board member is sworn in, which is in January, the next weekend or so, they go to what's called an OSBA, Ohio School Board Association, who is their coaches. You pay, taxpayers pay, for the membership for your school board to be members. And at that weekend, we were taught how to be good school board members. And we were told a lot of great pieces of information. Sunshine Law executive session, confidentiality, how the district operates, what your role is. We were told to be good school board members, you must be a cheerleader for your district. You must not air dirty laundry. You must not take anybody by surprise. You must not walk through the building because people will get nervous. I mean, a myriad, the whole weekend's filled with all the things that you should not do so that you can be a good school board member. I have to say, I didn't drink that Kool-Aid in the back of the room, and I left that meeting knowing I was not going to be a good school board member. I was going to have a difficult 4 years, and I knew right then it was like a wave went over my body, and I thought, wow, this is not going to be easy. It would be so much easier to sit there and smile and say yes to everything on the agenda. That is not the way I'm wired. And I don't think that's why the community hired me. I don't think that's what they were asking me to do. And I'm going to go according to what I think the voters voted for. I'm going to ignore that advice on being a good school board member. I'm going to do something different. Our school board, once we took board majority, which was a couple years ago, we discontinued our membership in OSBA. What we did was we saved our district $5,500 a year. We felt that that money would be better spent on textbooks for a whole grade level. We said, never mind, there really isn't anything that we get from OSBA other than coaching in a direction that we don't follow. We will find out about the sunshine law. We will follow executive session. So what happened was, during those first couple years, a very rocky road for me. It was not fun. We had executive sessions where they would walk out, and they would call meetings, and they would yell at me, say, I'm just asking questions. I'm still sitting here. You guys are the ones walking out. I'm just asking questions. Or I would say no to something nobody's ever said no to. Or I would ask a question. Nobody's ever asked a question in public like me. One of those questions was, for example, I wanted to know, and I thought I could ask this question behind closed doors. But what happens when you ask a question behind closed doors? Do you think anybody ever addresses it? No. I asked, why does anybody understand this? So I'm sitting up on stage because it's a formal board meeting, and we're on TV because they film us and put us on TV. That's the perfect place to ask the question. I said, does anybody have a concern that 23% of our students need remedial courses before they get in college? That number had increased 7% in the last 3 years. I have the places to find that data, and I will share it with all of you. But you find that place, it's called the Ohio Board of Regents, and they keep track of that. And I said, is anybody else concerned about that? Nobody said a word, just not a sound. I thought, okay, well, I'll drop it for now, because my intent was, we have to talk about it. Let's start a dialogue. I'm not beating you up, I'm just asking you a question. So afterwards, one of the teachers walked up and said, well, Dr. Kohls, you understand that the state average is 41%, so we're doing much better than the state average. And I really should have probably not said anything, but it blurted right out of me. I said, well, Mr. So-and-so, I don't take great comfort in knowing that other schools do worse. He says, but really, some of these students probably shouldn't go to college. And I said, well, Mr. So-and-so, if even one of our students doesn't meet the minimum competencies to get into college, I think we have a problem. If they want to go to college and we don't meet that minimum competency, we should be taking our students to that level. But guess what it is today, guys? 14%. The next year, it was addressed. Somebody's paying attention to it. And because we made it public and said, I'm paying attention, what are you doing about it? They did some things. I don't even know what they did. I don't care. I just know the results. And the results are there. So next slide, please. When students matter most, this came from, again, ODE. They said that. NAEP, which is our national exam scores, are flat and have been for a long time. ACT scores, flat, have been for a long time. College remediation, those students that need remedial courses, up. They said our state assessment of our performance is better, though. We think more of ourselves. More of us are excellent with distinction. Even they admit it. There's a mismatch. Next slide. So here's the new A through F system. Yay, right? They've done some things right in Columbus. Okay, so right now, if you see this, there are 352 districts, excellent with distinction. Once the new grading system goes into effect, which is just being piloted this year, it's actually in effect next year, only 22 districts will be A's. That makes more sense. But guess what the biggest difference is? I know I just inflate you to just see you deflate. It's kind of fun for me, but I'm watching it. The only difference is that instead of 75% of your students having to be proficient or above, 80% of your students need to be proficient or above. We have not yet changed those cut scores. I hope, if we stay on target here, that we can convince them that you have to stop accepting failing grades. That those students you start eking that score up. Okay, that's what we need. Next slide, please. Why? There's little evidence that class size and teacher-student ratios have any impact on academic success. We have the resources. We've been giving it resources. We have the educated professionals. We've been giving that to it. Where are we going wrong? Keep this question open. Next slide, please. Remedial rates. I did get these numbers. I got a few in here for you. But remedial rates in Westerville. Now, there are 3 high schools? Yeah. Okay. So Westerville Central, 32% of your graduates that stay in-state need remedial coursework. 37 at Westerville North. Well, I spelled that kind of weird. And 44% at Westerville South. And the state average is 41. So I guess Westerville could say, we are doing better than the state average. But is it okay that 1 in 3 of your students that graduates can't meet the minimum competencies? Yeah, I'd say you've got some questions, that's all. I'm not telling you the answers. You've got some good questions. Next slide. Oops, what was that last one? Sorry. Oh, okay, there you go. Westerville. I'm just looking at some of the things. I will fill these in if I don't have them. This is one of those slides that I'm going to fill in for you. I love to put the numbers in here, and that way you can process it. Next slide, please. I was looking at this, and I was looking at median household income over time, and looking at what's happened to us. Definitely. I think some of us have experienced it more than others, but we've seen that drop in the later years. This is 2011, 2012, 13, and how low we've gone. And they actually have, every couple months, they have those little red dots. We're not recovered. I don't care who says that. I watch Fox, and I'm more likely, not completely likely, but more likely to get the facts on there. But this is a pretty cool chart. I'll send that to you in the PowerPoint. Next slide, please. Okay, examine further from I looked, that's 5 years. Sorry, I forgot to change that. But 7 to 13, 5 years. I'm going to fill these in. But I did get the last one. Teacher salaries went up during those 5 years, $3,600 on average. Whereas Westerville households went up $1,200. This is kind of what I've been witnessing across Ohio, is that whatever household income change occurs, it seems like within the district, it's a multiple of that. So the complaint that I have and would like to suggest a change, and I don't know if it's at the state level or if it's at the district level, but that we have parity. I think you find a lot of taxpayers getting pretty frustrated because they see the lack of understanding of the economic reality inside the district. Because we can all live our economic reality, but if they ignore it inside the district and say, well, feel bad for you, but give me my money. It gets a little frustrating to the taxpayer. And when you know that your taxpayers are getting more and more and more disengaged, more and more disenfranchised, you shouldn't wonder why if you start looking at these numbers. There's a lack of parity in pay and benefits. And maybe we could pull that together and make everybody understand that whatever the community is experiencing should be the same economic reality inside the district. And that's always been my goal, is that when people outside my district complain about my district, those are my kids in there. I have 5 of the little fronts. And those are my kids in there. And I don't want the community thinking negatively about the kids and the district and the parents. It's creating this divisiveness. If we could come together on an understanding that the economic reality in the community isn't what it is in there, and we're growing more and more animosity against the district because of their lack of understanding. And every time a levy comes on, that subject keeps coming up. Is that, where's the parity here? I can't keep you in a lifestyle that I can no longer afford myself. That's the economic reality, right? So there has to be a dialogue, and I'm trying. That doesn't seem to go over well, but you have to try. Next slide, please. Why doesn't the system have corrections? Why aren't we correcting for all? It's been happening for years, guys. Under the Strickland administration, nobody admitted anything. And under the Kasich administration, they are. I'm thankful for that. Just tell us. As a parent, I want to know if my child's failing. Let me address it then. I don't know, I won't address it. Why doesn't the system use data to drive their actions? They don't want you necessarily to have the data. Ohio School Board is starting to produce some of this data. If you call them and ask them, they will direct you to the data so that you can have it. Now, are they out there in the newspapers? Cleveland does some good articles. Once in a while, you get the Columbus Dispatch to do a good article with some of this data. So they're starting to come around. They're starting to help us. Where are our elected officials? Jim? Sorry. Who are all the people running? Who are the people running for school board?
John's over there.
Okay, John.
Luke's back here.
Luke's behind the post. Okay, I thought I saw a few other people that were running. Okay. But where are you? Get on that school board and let our organization help you. Is this dereliction of duties? And I have to say, I have thought that many times, that my fellow school board members, not the ones now, but previous, were derelict. Because honestly, I would watch, they would show up to the meetings for the first time, look at the agenda for the first time once they sat down, knowing that they were going to come in and get paid $125 to say yes to everything that was on it. They didn't look at it a day before, an hour before. They were just looking at it for the first time. they started new initiatives. And so when I came in and I started asking some of the questions, and now school lunch is an issue, and some of the history stuff that we're teaching is an issue for me. When I start that, I'm such an outlier that they get mad. Inside the district, they kind of get mad. Who are you? What do you know? And I keep saying, what do I know? The child came from my uterus. Until they come out of yours, I get to decide some of these things. Really. It is about who gave birth to this child and who should have control over what curriculum you're feeding them. And I disagree with some of the nonsense you're feeding them. And I want you to offer them something else. Parents have the right to demand that this book not be forced down my child's throat. You will give me a different book. You have the right to do that. Parents don't know that. We have to get parents in this school to understand you have rights. And you have rights to deny your child the Howard Zinn book of socialism, communism. So, hey, anybody see me on the Blaze? I tried to send out notice. It was 5 o'clock on a Friday, but I was on with David Barton and I talked about the Howard Zinn book. I didn't know my daughter was being required to read that book. I didn't know that until she walked up to me and she said, Mom, this book is really bothering me. And it was a 700-page book written by Howard Zinn. And I didn't know who it was. And I said, oh, Harper, you're just being a weenie. Give me the book. And I started reading. I was incensed by page 6. I thought, oh, I could watch 5 minutes of MSNBC and be more, couldn't have my blood pressure any higher. So I went in and I said, my gosh, look what we're doing, because I looked up Howard Zinn, self-proclaimed Marxist communist. He hates this country, obviously, from the writings in this book, but the book is meant to leave the reader disgusted with their heritage. Why would we do that to our children? And this was in an AP history class, our advanced placement, our top scoring students take this class. And we're making them feel ashamed of their heritage. Yeah. To be ashamed of everything, starting from Christopher Columbus. She only got to page 20, thank goodness, before she brought it to my attention. There were 700 pages of telling these poor students how bad our nation is. It's anti-military, anti-Christian, anti-capitalism, and what did I say, Christian? There were 4 of them that I listed. Anti-everything we believe in. And so I wrote to the teachers that I refuse. She will not read the likes of a political lunatic. You will find her another book. But I went in and talked to the teacher, and here's the problem I'm having, guys. You've got to get involved in this curriculum. You have to. Your school district should have a citizens advisory group where you get to look at all the curriculum. If they don't, they should. Every school district should, so that you can say, hey, let me see the 7th grade history book. Let me just look through it. Our organization in November 16th, right here in Columbus, will have a conference. At that conference, it's osblc.org.com. Oh, I left it in my car, guys. I have flyers for everybody. Somebody, Luke, has keys. It's in the trunk. It's in the trunk. There you go.
Are they loose or in a box? Are they loose or in a box?
They're in a box.
Okay.
We have a bunch of stuff in a box. Anyway, go to osblc.org and you'll see that conference. But we have at least 3 speakers, experts in history, coming to talk about why it's important to get history correct. And they're going to talk about their books, the book we're currently using called The Americans. There's a historian who's gone through that and highlighted all the incorrect things that are in their current history book. It's important. So anyway, that's one of the tracks that if you want to come learn about curriculum, the other track is on financials. So it's a whole day of learning all kinds of cool stuff about districts, and yours included. Anyway, next slide, please. I don't know that all school board members are derelict. I think some get involved and some ask questions, but it's not enough. But what's a hoax on you guys is that you work hard to get people elected who will get in there and hold the district accountable. Their pay tells them that their job is to come in and say yes to everything. When you pay them $125 per meeting, who's going to quit their full-time job and do this for full-time except a lunatic? You know, who? Or somebody that's retired, doesn't have kids in the district, and that's okay too. Did you know, by the way, that 60% of these communities across Ohio do not have children in the district? So if somebody ever says, you can't run for school board, you don't have children in the district, you don't have any skin in the game. Well, one, your skin is, your cash is your skin. Okay? Money is skin. And you're probably better off not having children in the district, because that way you're not targeted through the children. During negotiations, I was told I needed to meet my children out at the school bus, because they'd be out there picketing on my street, and they would say things to my children. I thought, oh, right there, good luck with it. Because this mom will not stand still for that. But, you know, I was told that they would be targeted. Now, they were not. We didn't go that far, but I was told it gets ugly. I know that other students hear things about your mom's this, your mom's that. Your mom only allowed 2 ketchup packages in the cafeteria. Whoa. That is really a building level decision. I would never go that far. But you can have all the ketchups you want now in Springboro, because that was made public. Really, that's what we do. Anyway, I got off the subject. OSBA, I've talked about them before. They don't like me talking about them, but I think it's important for you to know. In fact, I got kind of a letter from them telling me to listen to see, but that's okay. I think bigger people than them have tried to make me shut up. It's not working. So OSBA, Ohio School Board Association, is an organization that's supposed to coach your school board members, but they're coaching them to do just what they've been doing, which is nothing. My organization, OSBLC, coaches school board members to do something very different. So if you're interested, go join us. Your legal counsel, I'll tell you a couple stories about legal counsel. When I got on the school board, one of my initiatives, before I got on the school board, I wanted to know why we still do administrative pickup. Do you know what that is? Okay, the state mandates, it's law, that you as the taxpayers pay 14% of an administrator or anybody's income in the district into their retirement system. It's also mandated by law that they pay 10% of their income into their retirement system. But in pickup is where you, the taxpayer, pick up both pieces. So you pay that 10% for them. And that's called pickup, which I equate that to a bonus package. And my school board members didn't agree with me, the 4 initially. They didn't agree. They said, no, that's part of compensation. So we asked legal counsel, can we do away with pickup? Because it was almost $200,000. And because we were in an emergency levy situation, we had stopped high school busing. And I said, I find it odd that we can no longer safely transport our students to school, but we can continue this administrative bonus package. I find that not children first, and I'm not inclined to agree. So we kind of thought about it for a few months. We asked legal counsel. Legal counsel comes back and says, well, no. ORC Code 3319.02 says you may not reduce an administrative compensation package. I thought, well, wait a minute. Administrators get to the end of a contract in 2 or 3 years. You non-renew that contract and you offer them a contract without it. And if they choose to leave, okay, we'll get somebody else. It's okay. You know, it's not like you're the only one in the country that can do this job. I would hate to lose them for that reason. But, and then I said that to legal counsel, and she said, oh, well, yeah, you can do that. But, shh, darn it. Her first response was protecting the employee, not the taxpayer. I thought, okay, now I get it. I get it. Legal counsels are set up to protect the adults too. I got it. So then, we got different legal counsel. I did convince the school board that we needed different counsel. That I found the advice was always protecting the adults, nothing outside the box, the status quo, everybody else does it, that's what you gotta do. I didn't like that. I didn't think that was what Springboro needed, so we did hire a new legal counsel. And when we asked legal counsel this time that question, his response was, well, yeah, let's do it. And we did it. It's gone. Been gone for a year. And we now safely transport our students to school. All busing has been restored, but pickup stopped. Okay. Another thing was, we asked previously legal counsel, can we do away with the old legal counsel? Can we do away with tenure? I don't know about you guys, but I was in a tenure system. And I've gone on the news, boy, I'm sure my face in the break rooms have lots of holes from the darts, but I've said on the news that I think tenure is the destruction of education.
Absolutely.
That's not been popular, but it is. It is. So we asked legal counsel, can we do away with tenure? Her response was, well, no. If they apply, you give it to them. That's just, you got to have a reason, and there's no reason good enough, blah, blah, blah. When we got new legal counsel, we asked that question again, can we do away with tenure? And he says, well, you have to have a reason. Well, this new school board, 2 guys like me, so there's 3 of us now, we said, well, we don't believe in it. He said, the new legal counsel said, I can defend that. We just have to have a reason. Our reason was, we don't believe in it. He said, I can defend that. We've not offered tenure in 3 years. Nobody has applied because they know we will deny. As long as you do it across the board. We could not pick out one employee without a reason better than that. But we could say we don't believe in tenure, and so for 3 years nobody's applied. Okay, so it can be done. We can change the system. Okay, the Ohio Department of Education is a great resource. You might call them and say, hey, this is what I'm looking for. Can you help me out? Data is a little old. Your superintendent treasurer, good sources of information. But I've noticed something, it's a trend. This is my 4th year, by the way, and I think we have our 3rd superintendent, and we are on our 4th treasurer. Well, there's just a merry-go-round, guys. They just get on the merry-go-round, they get off at the next stop. Get on the merry-go-round, get off at the next stop. And especially if you have a school board that asks questions. It seems to rock their boat. And I've always said, I always keep getting blamed as the reason that one left or that one left. I just ask questions. I'm just a mommy of 5 kids. I'm interested. You know, I don't make anybody leave. I never asked anybody to leave. But OSBA tells you don't ask people questions in public, right? So I go to this treasurer. He was the 2nd one in line. And I said, look, I don't understand this 5-year forecast. Can you explain it to me? Because board meeting's later tonight. Can you explain it to me? Why are we projecting this? And it was when we were projecting a $30 million deficit, right? And he says, well, those aren't my numbers. Those are the previous treasurer's numbers. So every time I asked a question, he'd say, well, those aren't my numbers. Those are the previous treasurer's numbers. And I said, okay, that's fine. That's a legitimate response. I'm just warning you. I'm going to ask these questions again tonight in public. Because I want the public to know that I'm asking these questions, that I'm asking the questions I should be asking. And just so you know, your response is legitimate. You give your response. He quit that night. I did not make him leave. I did not take him by surprise. I was following all the rules. I didn't know that would make him resign. So anyway, the next treasurer was the one that found we had a $42 million swing in the budget. Interesting. Okay, union. How does a union influence board members? Well, there's a significant number of ways that happens, but we're not really able to talk to employees, which would be really handy. Because I would love to know if there's something that a teacher or administrator finds is a hang-up to educating kids. I would love for them to be able to come to me and say, look, I'm not able to get as much done in this classroom because of this. But the lines of communication are fairly well drawn, and it has to go through the administrative channels. So board members aren't typically able to have those conversations, but I'm okay if any of them want to come to me at any time and tell me I am not going to divulge that confidential information, but I'm going to probably ask if we need to write a policy that'll help get that addressed, that issue addressed. So it's a tough kind of tenuous situation. The labor units want to also speak for teachers, not administrators, but also for staff. So usually you have to go through that channel, and there's nothing wrong with that. But it is more difficult, I think, to get things done for kids when you have these blocks of communication you can't get to the people who are actually doing the job in the classroom. We have adopted a policy in Springboro that we fund what a teacher needs in the classroom first. So a teacher has to budget everything in her or his classroom for the whole year. And then they send it to the principal and say, I need these things. Because we don't want any longer for a teacher to say, I had to buy supplies out of my pocket. We don't want that. We want to supply those things because if that's what a teacher needs to teach, they should be funded, right? So we said, teachers, you come up with your budget, and they're 100% funded. Unless your principal takes something out, and I kind of doubt that because I think I hear those complaints. But usually they go to the principal. Principal puts together their budget, which includes every teacher he or she has, their budgets, plus what he or she needs to get their job done. We fund in that kind of a tiered approach now. What's left, we'll see if we can fund some of the pay and benefit changes. We'll see if that's left. But we educate kids first, and the adult needs come a little later. That's a very different philosophy than how we were operating before. Okay, next slide, please. We'll just keep on going because I am talking way too much. I know you're all getting, you probably all ate, you're ready for bed. Am I boring you? I'm not seeing any eyes glaze over, so I think I'm okay so far. But I do try to watch for that. I was a professor for 10 years, and I usually try to watch for that head nod thing. Okay, everybody get a stretch here a little bit. But I don't see that yet tonight. That's good. Good sign. Here, I'm suggesting that you ask your school board to get new coaches. Maybe I've got a sales job here. So far, guys, I'm just telling you, we're all volunteers. OSBLC board, we're just board members from across the state who found the same problems in our districts. We just started talking to each other and saying, okay, how did you guys handle this? And we found we were the only ones really engaged on trying to improve education. The other school board members didn't seem to be interested. They had their lives to live, they just want to come in and say yes and leave. So within a couple hours, they could earn $125. That's good pay. That's good pay. But you know, I probably make 10 cents an hour with the hours I put in. And I would suggest that school board members' job is a little bit larger. I'm going to suggest to the state that we pay school board members more. And I'm going to suggest to the state, which I already have, my organization, by the way, is a 501c6 now, which means we can lobby, just like OSBA does. So my ideas are to have school board members that are full-time employees, and they are the school board of the county, so that we have 88 of them, and not 615. We have 88, and those people work full-time, and those people are elected by their communities. So if my community says, Kohls, we want you over there, county level, then Kohls goes to the county level. If they say, Kohls, you're a pain in the hiney, we don't want you, then I don't get to go there. I'll still do my thing with OSBLC. But I'm thinking that that makes more sense. And you get people to do this job and hold people accountable, not people just to come in and rubber stamp the decisions that the superintendent wants. Honestly, they're all trained in the same school. And the school is titled, How to Manipulate the Voters Out of Their Money. That's the school for superintendents. Now, I have a superintendent finally that's an outside-the-box person. It took us 3. But I like him. We get along great. He actually told me he was very upset with me for a week. He couldn't call me. We talk all the time. But he was really upset with me because when I announced I wasn't going to run for school board. And he said, would you write me a letter of recommendation because he wants to leave. I think that's a good sign, right? I must not be too hard to get along with if the superintendent wants to stay just because you're there. I think that's a positive sign. Because I found somebody who asks the questions just like I do. And if I ask it, he pays attention to it and he goes and finds the answer or puts somebody on that task. I suspect that our academics will lead this state because we have a system that's now accountable. And it's a beautiful thing when it all works out. But I'm not going to run for school board. I'm going to let 2 other guys come in, I hope. Kind of like your school board. I hope they come in and they keep the system running the way we have it. Very efficient, very lean. Reform. Get new coaches. Get OSBLC. Every one of you can be a member. It's $40 a year, citizen membership. What that does is it helps me pay for a lot of the reprints that I bring to you guys. A lot of this stuff, I'm paying $1,000 for the insurance out of my own pocket. We don't have money. Unlike Fordham Institute referred to us as a well-funded, conservative, you know, kind of all those little titles I need to start putting on a t-shirt, although I need a bigger t-shirt now, because I've been called an extremist, radical, you know, right-wing Christian, well-funded. The well-funded part is the part I'm really struggling with. I don't know where that funding is. And we all kind of look at each other and laugh and say, are you holding out? Somebody here is holding out because somebody's got funding. But we don't. Your membership helps us get things done. And all the travel is out of my pocket. But what it helps us do is put on performances. We had, for example, if you go to the front page, you know anything about Common Core? I can come back and talk about Common Core. It's a whole presentation by itself. But if you go to our front page, you click on it, and it's a 2.5-hour debate. If you ever want to get caught up on what Common Core is, you watch that debate. Because we had 3 panelists, and here's what with our memberships, this is what we paid for. We paid for the facility and water and speakers, gas cards and things like that. But we had 3 people that support Common Core speaking, and they were the experts. Fordham Institute, the Ohio School Board, and Ohio Legislator. Then we had 4 people who were opposed to Common Core, and they were the bigwigs from the Pioneer Institute, the Heartland Institute, and they were just, you know, kind of back and forth. It was beautiful. And you will learn a lot if you go there, but that's the kind of thing that I think we should be doing as school board people. Okay, bottom line. You need to understand that the bottom line, which is, again, will be presented at this conference November 16th. I have this speaker from, yikes, he's from New York. He's coming to give a speech on how our school system should be operated like a business. He wrote an article, it's a beautiful article, and I invited him, and they're going to come down and speak for us at the November 16th conference. But I think we need to understand that education is a business. We have a product, we have a customer, we have deliberations, we have a budget. There is a bottom line. I don't think that education systems typically think that there is. They think there's an endless bucket of money. And if it gets to the bottom, they say, well, okay, come on, give me more. And we need to not operate like that. We've chosen now at Springboard not to deficit spend. We may do that once in a while, but we're going to try to make up for it in other areas. It's a long story. How do we know we need new coaches? Because we're told we need to pay a benefit the way we do because we need those people there. One of the things that people should understand is that when we advertise for a first grade teaching position, we had 1,000 applicants. If we use market principles, which business does, it might dictate that a different system needs to be in place. So I'm often told, well, teacher starting salary is so low, how could you expect anybody to live on that? And I think, well, let me go find out. So I did. Opportunity Ohio did some homework for me, and they came back with the starting salary for all college grads across this country. Guess what it is? Starting salary for all college grads, their first starting salary. No, it's 36. What's the starting salary for a teacher? Just out of college, 35. So we're right in line. I don't think that's an issue. I think the starting salary is what it is because that's the market, and the market dictates that. And that's not bad. That's not a bad salary. The thing is, we do have a flood, but not for all grade levels. So elementary, we do have plenty to pick from, but when you get to the upper level, science and math, we don't. Perhaps if we then, again, use market principles, we have to pay more for those individuals so we get a bigger pool. But right now, the system is not using market principles. And I would like to see that instituted because that makes sense. I would love to see an applicant pool for a high school math position where we have 25. But what we're getting, even in a school system where everybody wants to come work, according to superintendent, we have 5. We'll have 5 applicants. That's not a large pool. So maybe at those kinds of levels, you kind of decipher where you're going to need to put more money to get more applicants. But market principles would be very helpful. Pay and benefit. Oh, next slide, please. Okay, next slide, please. I'll fill those in and send them to you. One of the things that I thought was interesting, did you guys hear, about SB 5? Issue 2? Okay. I was asked and I did testify in support of SB 5, and I did that because I know about the education system. One of the things that I said was, in my testimony, was that during the levy campaigns, that we had less gifted services, less special ed. We did away with high school busing, the 2-mile radius busing. We had pay-to-play fees that were $475. I mean, I had this huge list of things that the children did without during the levy campaign. But all the while, we were still giving pay raises of about 3%. They averaged about 3%. While the community income went down 1.5%, our incomes for staff went up 2.5% overall. I said, see, we're having some problems here, and we have to bring this into scale. The children do without every time we run out of money. I was suggesting that we do something different, that SB 5 would be very helpful. One of the senators who was on the education committee, and he was obviously opposed to SB 5, I gathered that from his response, but he says, well, Dr. Kohls, don't you think it's unfair for employees not to be able to bargain for 15% of their health care costs? And I said, well, sir, that's the part of SB 5 that I would change. And he perked right up because he wanted to hear me say that there was some portion of SB 5 that I didn't support. He wanted to hear me say that. I said, that's the part of SB 5 that I would change. The average across the country for healthcare cost split is 30%. What I would do is change SB 5 to say 30%, because that's fair. That's the national average, and that's fair. Can you imagine? He didn't like that. So he scowled right there. I thought, wow, what a childish. He just scowled right at me. But this whole side of the table was going like this. They like that answer. So if I had to change something, it would be again to bring parity. And the reason I think we need parity, although there's multiple reasons, is that this divisiveness between community and district is harmful. We don't like it. I don't like it as a parent. I don't like it as a community member. To get us all on the same page, we have to have benefits and salaries and the changes in those salaries that are a match. Otherwise, you're creating a system of two different segments and they get mad at each other. You won't give me more. And community saying, I don't have any more. I didn't get any more. Sorry, but that's life. So we're not talking the same language in these communities. Next slide, please. This is just the number, well, just go next slide, please. This is the number of retirees in these segments of our workforce or retired workforce that get health care benefits in retirement. So if you look at that, private employers offer 18% of their employees health care in retirement. Public employees, 63% get health care benefits in retirement. And again, there's a lot of disparity here. When you start looking at the data, you start kind of getting frustrated. Next slide, please. This is something I'll just send you, but this is kind of what the guys, I always say that the two guys that got elected and now are on the school board with me, it's Jim Regano and David Petroni. I always refer to them as the brains and I'm the mouth. It works out pretty well. But they came up with this beautiful pyramid and they said just what I described to you, that if you fund everything that the teacher needs in the classroom first, because that's directly related to education, those are the core services, that you fund those first. That's the basic building block of your budget. Second would be the non-core or support services, that makes sense, and each district can define what those include. And then the next one is the extras, like the extracurriculars. Are those important to you? In our district, we have determined, our philosophy is that we believe that extracurriculars should be self-funded, that the taxpayers should not have to pay for that, that the taxpayers have been generous, and that they agree that they will pay for the core education that these children need, that the extracurriculars should be on parents. I'm with them. That's your parent choice and your child's choice. I don't believe the taxpayers should have to fund that. So sports could be totally club sports, which are totally separate, or our district doesn't fund. Right now there's a gap. It's $1 million sports program that we have. Total, they brought in all the receipts and they found $1 million is what it costs us to run all of our sports. Because we want that self-funded, we say that that's got to be covered, guys, parents. You cover it with fundraising, you cover it athletic department with advertising, you cover it with pay to play. Somehow you cover all those expenses. And you know this last year we got it done, all but about $120,000 that the district had to cover at the end of the whole thing. So what we did was we hired a new athletic director and one of his specific goals is to bridge that gap so that it doesn't come out of general funds. So he's got a $120,000 goal. He's going to sell advertising across our football field. He's going to do whatever he's got to do. He's got to market our system, get more people to come to them, come to the games, get better gate receipts. But his goal and his job, one of his goals, is to cover that gap. So if it's $120,000 that the district was covering out of general funds, we're saying that's your job. Have fun. You know, and he took it on. He said, absolutely, I think I can do that. But the rest of it comes from their fundraising, the boosters, you know, everything else they do, it does not come from general funds. I agree with that philosophy, obviously, but so did the guys. Okay. And then the last thing on that pyramid was the top, that's okay. The last thing was the pay and benefits. So if you look at these 5-year forecasts that I printed on Westerville, and it's good for you guys to look at that. Saw some interesting stuff, and it would take me a while to talk to you about it. But in our 5-year forecast, for example, we have a new philosophy. We believe that our 5-year forecast should reflect no raises. Now, if you talk to treasurers across the state, they'll go, oh, that's crazy. You can't assume no raises. Like, we're not really assuming that there would be no raises. We're assuming that we need to negotiate that. So we're going to take the $25 million we spend, and it's going to be 25 million, 25 million, 25 million across that 5 years. Okay? And then our health care and retirement is going to be the same number all the way across those 5 years. Because I think that if you start with a 3% in there, 3% more per year, then that's where your negotiations start. If you start at 0, that's where your negotiations start. So our philosophy's been very different. And that's not why we had that $42 million swing. We actually had the swing before we started doing this. But it shows our 5-year forecast in the positive for years to come. Now, if we have extra money at the end of funding every core service we need to educate kids, we'll talk about how to spend that money. And that could be to continue benefits the way we have them because, you know, they go up every year. Or it could be to give raises. So this year we got $3.5 million more from a pipeline that went through the area. Right? Great. I said we should all celebrate that. We have our core services covered. The kids have everything they need, according to their teachers, because they submitted the budget. They have everything they need. Sports are self-funded. We have $3.5 million surplus in our budget that we didn't calculate in. How do we spend that? Well, we gave raises. Because, you know, if your community prospers, everybody should. That's how I feel about it. So everybody in the district has an interest in making businesses come to the area. Because if the median household income goes up, so does theirs. See how the system can work better? So what we did is we gave raises. Our teachers got a 5 to 6% raise this year. I mean, significant. Our other staff got at least a couple percent. Then everybody got a $1,000 stipend because we went to an 80-20 healthcare cost split. So we amply gave because we had. And that's why the system has to trust your school board members to make those decisions. If we have it, you will get it. But what was fair, and I had to stick to this, guys, it wasn't easy. There was some loud voices for a while. Yes, mine gets up there around 130 decibels, I'm told. But I was very frustrated. Ask my children. It could get kind of loud. But I was frustrated. I said, if we're gonna pay and benefit over here, we're gonna say yes to a contract that's very, very generous, then I think we have to roll back taxes for the taxpayers by the same amount. And that happened. We said everybody should celebrate our good fortune. So yes, district employees got, you know, a great raise, stuff they're comfortable with, but we rolled back $1.3 million a year to the taxpayers. That makes sense. If we didn't have that amount to roll back to the taxpayers, then we should not have given it to employees. But since we had this newfound money, I think that's fair. I don't know if the rest of you see it that way, but I could justify that. Next one. Okay, run for school board. I'm sure you're getting bored. Let's go on to the next. I just want to get to the, here we go. We have falsely and significantly inflated our education egos while ignoring the significant deficiencies that we have in our education system. The public has largely been kept from these facts through manipulation and misrepresentation of the information released by our public education system. Unfortunately, all the money and information manipulation has resulted in a reduced academic outcome. It appears that For the Kids was a part of that manipulation. For the last 20 plus years, we have let our students down. We have become an adults-first education system, and the children have been left behind. Influencers to the decision makers in education seem to have convinced board members that their job is to protect employees first and then try to educate. Become an informed consumer and elect school board members that will not be swayed by those influencers. Board members must remember that they are the boss, and excellence in education is the product. The board members are at the top of the organizational chart. Early on, when I came to the school board, I said, we don't have an organizational chart anywhere on our website. We have one now. And it shows the Board of Education at the top. I want people to understand, one, the formal lines of communication, so that they can, oh, I have to go talk to this principal first. I'm grateful for that. But I also want people to understand that ultimately, we're held responsible. That not that we're going to go around and strut our stuff, but we're going to be held responsible. So it is my job to ask the questions and hold people accountable, because ultimately, I'm going to be held accountable. That's what I wanted people to see. It's not like I'm just some frivolous person just kind of hanging out here. But I was in court today because I'm being sued because I have to hold people accountable. So if I'm going to be on the block to be sued, then I want to make sure that I've done my due diligence. And some of that is asking questions. Some of that is holding people to their job description. Or not hiring people if I don't think they're fit. because I'm ultimately responsible for that. So anyway, next slide, please. Okay, adult goods and services are fenced off. So this is what I've been saying. We're doing our budget differently, and I would encourage you to encourage your district to do it differently. Because before now, Springboro has always had about 85% of your budget is personnel expenses. It's a service industry, so it's going to be high. But before recently, we fenced off that 85%, and we've always said that's untouchable. You can't touch that. So really, the board's discretion was only over 15% of the budget. Really? So I can only decide what books to order? No, I can't. That's not even part of our decision making. It's something that's recommended to us. But there's very little then decision making over the finances that board members get to do if it's just 15% of the budget. So we finally said, no, that 85%, we're not fencing it off anymore. We're not going to try, this is my own philosophy, I'm not speaking for anybody else on the school board. Tonight, I'm not speaking for anybody else on the school board. I'm here as an individual. But my philosophy has always been I don't want people to have to do with less money. I don't want pay cuts. If we can avoid that, that's exactly what we should avoid. But the rate of increase should be based on parity with the community. I think people inside the district would agree that sounds fair. It's not been suggested to them. But we don't want people to have to deal with less money because I've dealt with that, and that's hard. You know, our budget's significantly reduced, but that's not what I wish for anybody else. You don't wish that on people. Let's see. Okay, so I wrote on here that the children's needs typically came after we fenced off 85% of the budget. We do it differently now. The children's needs through that pyramid I just showed you come first. And there's no fencing off of the budget. Okay? The need to protect this way of operating causes the misinformation and voter manipulation we see today. And I don't, in my talks, target the union. I'm not sure, I mean, there's certainly times that I'm frustrated with that entity, but I'm not sure it's a disadvantage to have a collective kind of discussion. I'm not sure what that looks like in the best world, but I'm not willing to say that they're the cause of everything evil. I am, which some people would say. I've heard it said many times, but I'm thinking that it's more that school board members have been told to sit down and shut up and be a cheerleader, rather than stand up for the taxpayer. So somebody has let us down in this system, and I think quite a few people have let us down in this system, and one of those is your elected school board members. Okay. Great inflation comes from the need to perpetuate the untruths in public education. We're told that we need more money to continue to fund the quality we currently enjoy. I think you should ask, where's the proof of that quality? We're still waiting for it. Now, the state instituted several things. That A through F grading system, right on. We need to start doing that. They also instituted a few more things. Do you want me to shut up? You have to get out of here, Jim? 9 o'clock?
We're doing okay time-wise, but you're up long.
I do. Until he has that big hook.
If they're fine, we can go as long as
Well,
we want.
I just wanted to tell you that there's always things on my drive home. I'll think, oh, I wish I had told him about that. Now, where was I?
What the state is doing
Oh,
about
oh yeah, thank you. There are 6 things that the state has instituted in the last couple of years to be very helpful for us, and I wanted you to know those things. One of them was the A through F. The other one is the 3rd grade reading guarantee. Have you heard about that? It's where 100% of your students, your 3rd grade students, must read at a certain proficiency level to be progressed to the 4th grade. Now, when that came down, school districts, including mine and my great superintendent, panicked. Even though we have a very small population at risk here, they panicked because they said, well, gosh, if a student doesn't score well, they have to stay back in English or reading, and they can progress in every other subject. What a nightmare. That's a logistical nightmare. So they can be in 4th grade, 5th grade math and science, but they have to stay back in English. And they said, oh, we have to get them tutors, and it was a mess. But what my superintendent said during his interview, I asked him one question. I asked all the candidates the same question. I said, are you aware that our remedial rates are 23%? And what would you do about that? And he said, well, Dr. Kohls, I know. that that's happening at the lower levels, the younger levels. Because he was a principal at our school district years before at the lower levels, at elementary. And he says, I was trying to tell them that we're not teaching English language skills correctly. I showed him the data and I was getting frustrated, so I left because they wouldn't listen to me. He said that's happening at the younger levels. So he understood. I don't know if that's true, by the way, because it's not my expertise, but I appreciated that he had thought about it. So he said this third grade reading guarantee is actually a very positive thing, because then we won't progress these students. We stop them there. The only problem with it, I wish it were better, but rather than the proficient scores, a child only has to pass it at the basic level, so even below the failing grade. It's not a big bar. It's not a very high bar. And maybe at some point we'll raise it, but right now, at least it's step one. The other thing they did was Senate Bill 165. You ever heard of that? Senate Bill 165 said, as of last July, you have to teach in your school system and prove that you teach the original content and context of the 6 founding father documents. That includes the Ohio Constitution, the U.S. Constitution, the Declaration of Independence, the Bill of Rights, the Northwest Ordinance, and the Federalist Papers. We're having a little difficulty navigating the curriculum because when we suggest what we think they should learn from, that's not a match with inside the district, because, you know, some of ours we may pick, or just that right-wing radical blah, blah, blah. It's not. It's truthful. IOTC got shut down at our school, the IOTC class. We were going to offer it in the summer to our community members who wanted to take it so that they could review it and see if that content would be appropriate for our students. And do you know the left, far left radicals called the district, called the newspapers, called the news channels and told them that we were having these right-wing radicals come on our campus and teach Constitution? You believe that? I'm still going, what? How could you not? How could you not teach the Constitution and teach these children that the Constitution and all of these documents were written directly from the Founding Fathers' faith? They came exactly from their faith. They all had different degrees of faith, but they wrote those documents because they were faithful men. And they understood that nature and nature's God was responsible for our liberty. And they made that clear in the documents. It's very frustrating that we can't teach our children that everything in our school district is sterilized and sanitized of anything that's faithful. There goes the core. That's why morality is in the tubes. That's why these children are adrift. I read a whole speech. If you go to our school board, Springboro School Board, you can watch the videos of our school board meetings. There was one in July 11th, I think, where I read a speech about our children are adrift. You know what? There was a lot of union people in the room because they were bullying us about the contract. They got up and walked out. What does that say? That they don't want to hear that our content of what our instruction is might be offensive, or the lack of content might be a problem. I said they are adrift because they don't know who to believe. They're being led to believe that their parents and their churches are not truthful. Because evolution is taught as fact. Not that I think we should teach creationism. Maybe we should, maybe we shouldn't. I wasn't making that designation. But I was saying that it essentially calls the parents liars if the parents believe in creationism. Anyway, problems. Where was I? SB 165. So great, we got that done. We're still working on it. Every school district is. The other thing they did was OTES and OPES, Ohio Teacher Evaluation System. I already told you about that. Grateful for that. The other two things were Common Core and PERC assessments. That you've probably heard of. Have you? Yep. Common Core and PERC assessment. Who thinks Common Core is a positive, a good idea? Because some people do. No, nobody in here? Okay. Are you pretty much thinking it's a bad deal?
I talked to a principal today and he said he thought it was good.
Oh, they all think it's good. Yeah, everybody in the district, because they are listening to the Ohio School Board. And it's hard not to. Because if you think to yourself as a superintendent, curriculum director, HR, anybody, that I'm going to have to ignore state standards, because these are adopted state standards, and do something else, that's an overwhelming task. So I was in a meeting with the Ohio School Board, president and vice president, and with about 5 of my friends, that feel the way I do about Common Core, and we were asking some very legitimate questions about Common Core. What about this? What about this? And Tom Gunlock, who I like Tom May if you're watching this video, I like him, but we were having this dialogue, and he said, Kelly, if you disagree with Common Core, Springboro doesn't have to adopt it. Springboro can opt out. So I said, okay, so you're telling me that I can go back to my school district and tell them that our standards already exceed Common Core, we don't need to buy your materials, and we don't need to follow your standards, and I can do that, Tom? And Tom said, yes. But I looked across the table, and the Fordham Institute and the president of the school board said, but I would not do that. And I said, why? Why wouldn't you do that? And they both said, because your students won't pass the test. I said, exactly. So do I really have a choice? The answer is no. And the reason is, they felt fairly well that even though our students are some of the top students in the state, we score really well. Even though we score above what Common Core would be, that the content would be different than what we teach. That's what I was afraid of. They kind of admitted it. Our students won't pass the test because the content of what you're going to test them on is not what we want them to know. It's going to be different. That was confirmation for me. Your students won't pass the test. You mean 40% of our students are gifted in Springboro. That's what our curriculum director told us. You mean they won't pass the test because what is going on in that test? They don't even know what's going on in that test because it hasn't supposedly been written yet. I don't believe that for a second. I believe the test has been written, and the standards came after the test was written. And the test was written to say, what do we want these little socialists to know? Okay, that's just me. Erase that, erase that. That's where I'm coming from. What do I want these little social beings to, And so I think this is part of the indoctrination. This is part of the plan. Get them all on the same curriculum. Nobody can pull off of this curriculum, right? That's how they're going to get it. They're going to get it to that stage. And that way every kid is taught the same stuff. And every kid will think that evolution is fact, even though many scientists can refute it with facts. That there are huge holes in Darwin's theory of evolution. Huge holes. We want our children to I don't care what you believe in, but you should encourage children to say, there's a huge hole in that science. Let me be the scientist that goes and finds the answer. But if they already think evolution's done, I got nothing to do over there, what else can I do? Ask kids what they want to be when they grow up, when they graduate. Have you done that? How many of them say, I want to work for a nonprofit? A lot say, I want to work for a nonprofit. You know why? Because they've been led to believe that making profit is evil. Capitalism is evil. That's a problem. Because as a board president, and I got these 5 kids, they bring their friends in, I'll say, well, what do you want to do? Well, I want to work for a nonprofit. Why? Because making a profit is bad, is evil. We've got already, and Tom Gunlock said that to me. I said, well, what about this left-leaning curriculum that's in this stuff? And he said, Kelly, that's already in there. I said, you're right. He said, so Common Core is not going to make that worse. It's already there. I said, no, Common Core will make it so that I can't demand my child not have to read that book. Now at the local level, I can say she will not read this piece of garbage. Not sure that's what I said, but she will not read this piece of garbage. I can do that at the local level. If this goes national, I won't be able to do that. Anyway, sorry guys, I took so long. I've got so much to say, so little time. Are there any questions? Are there any questions that I can answer for you? Yes.
I just wanted to know, has Columbus Public Schools ever asked you to get involved with them?
No school system has asked me to get involved with them. I don't know why. I'm willing, but no, I guess they don't want to hear. But you know what you usually elect? You usually elect school board members who are part of the system. And so they're not willing to change. They're not willing to buck the system. I've not seen it anyway. So no, nobody's asked me to do that. Yes?
What do you do when the school board has already
invested hundreds of thousands of dollars on materials in compliance with Common Core.
And he said, what do you do when they've already invested hundreds of thousands of dollars? And the problem is, they will invest far, far more than that. They will, in the future, they will invest far more. And you tell them cut the losses now. Your district doesn't have to do it, but your district does have to do it. So they're not going to pull out by themselves. I wouldn't pull us out. And I think we know how to do it, but I wouldn't do it. Yet, the state has to pull us out. We have to keep the pressure on the state. I would keep writing to them, keep calling them, tell them it's not for us. Hey, what I wanted to say was Massachusetts leads the country. You know why? Back in 2001, I often get this date wrong. Got me on video saying the wrong date, I'm embarrassed. But in 2001, President Bush put in the No Child Left Behind Act. And did you know that because the act scared so many schools across the country, that the state said, okay, we want out of this act. And schools opted out with a waiver. They applied for a waiver, and 49 states got a waiver. One state did not take the waiver, Massachusetts. Massachusetts said, we're going to take our lumps. We're going to look bad because it looks like we're failing, but we're going to rise to the occasion and do better. Massachusetts now leads the country because they didn't take that waiver. They dealt with the deficiencies back in 2001, and now they have the best schools in the country. So guess what? Ohio has now reapplied for the waiver. Most states, I think it's 45 or so, have applied for the waiver again. So I'd say let's stop. This time though, President Obama, what I'm understanding is President Obama has put financial sanctions on it. If you don't meet these new guidelines that he's got, then you will lose Title I money, which is millions of dollars in money. We can't afford that. So that's why the state went ahead and applied for the waiver, which obligated us. Yes, well, no, that's something else. But that obligated us to Common Core and Park assessments, that waiver did. So if we pull out of Common Core and Park assessments, we're going to have to come up with some other materials to use for a waiver. Or don't use the waiver. I don't know. Maybe something, yeah.
Goes.
You know, there was a presentation for my Common Core. What website is that at?
OSBLC.org. Yep, just click on it. I think it's right on the front page still, unless we put up our flyer, which I don't think we did yet, but it should be right on the front page. There's some other materials there, and I think it's, I usually bring it with me, but I ran out. But why, and again, I can send it to Jim and just ask Jim, but I've got a pamphlet that why Common Core deserves more scrutiny. If you go Common Core, you can find a lot of publications for your organization. Is that it? Yeah.
Where can I see the video, a repeat of what we just heard?
Oh, do you want to play it? Yeah.
What was recorded tonight?
Yeah.
Oh, that! Oh, okay.